So how can we educate our students and families so that they know about all this free money that's left on the table? I also want to introduce Sally Mae to you in case you are not aware of who we are. Sally Mae is an education solutions company that helps provide financial literacy tools along with other resources to help with college readiness and college success. So as we get started to talk about scholarships, I want to turn it over to my colleague Kelly and allow her to introduce herself and kick off our discussion this morning.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Jonathan. I am Kelly Savoie. Have been in been working in higher education for 26 years now. So, gosh, I did quick math and we're like a lot of years of experience here, working with you. And certainly, scholarships is a key to the puzzle. What we're going to go over today is we are going to talk about the data. Jonathan just shared with you some really impactful statistics. Sally Mae conducts several annual research studies with the Ipsos foundations. We're going to talk about that, the data, and share some findings with you today that really will help you to understand the importance of scholarships and finding that free money for to make education of different scholarships that we will discuss, and we'll touch on search engines and how easy they are to navigate today. We can go to the next. Okay, so let's talk about scholarships. All right. So the two studies that we're going to talk about is How America Pays for College. This is the 2024. We're actually out there right now putting together the 2025. But 2024 was the 17th year of surveying families. This survey goes out and surveys students and families of undergraduate students, and it gets their attitudes towards higher education and the resources that they relied on how they paid for it. We're out there in April, so we are getting the real research as to how they paid for that year of higher education. The second study that we're going to refer to is How America Completes College, and this explores the barriers to graduation, uncovering key differences between students who are at risk and those who are on track, and identifying opportunities to help them to make sure that we get them. They enter into higher education, and why are they not completing? What's the barrier to completion, and how can we help make sure that they get to that completion? So what we're going to say here, this is from the How America Pays for College, and the vast majority of undergraduate families do continue to report that they see higher education as an investment. So that is a good thing. This has been consistent and over the 17 years that we've done this study, and they do consider 88% see college as an investment in the students' future. What's interesting is 75% of parents and 66% of students would rather borrow than not be able to attend college. That statistic as a parent kind of always stands out to me, because I always tend to think students are more apt to just say, yes, let me borrow, but they actually have a lot of apprehensions in it, which is refreshing, I think, to see that. Go ahead. So cost is a key factor. The data from last year's survey tells us, we absolutely can't talk about going to school and staying with it without talking about the cost and how it factors in. 8 in 10 families did tell us that they eliminated a school from consideration based on a cost at some point in the process. What's really interesting, and that has been consistent over the years, over the past 5 years. But when you really look at it, you see that 80% of those looking to enroll eliminate it. I'm sorry, 64% eliminate it based on it before they even start researching a school. So that really begs the question of what are they looking at to really figure out what is the cost? And that's the importance of, helping students to understand, well, don't just look at a sticker price. Make sure we're looking at a net price calculator, and taking the resources to do that, because it's really important, and cost is a huge factor, and they're eliminating it. And we all know that many schools, because of scholarships, because of tuition discounting and such, many schools, that what's on their website as a sticker price is nothing of what I will be paying for that school. So it's really important to pay attention to that. So the ultimate school choice factor does vary by school. What we found is that families who choose two-year schools are more likely to consider the financial aspects. And the opposite end of the spectrum, families who select four-year private schools are more likely to report that their ultimate decision was based on academic consideration. So really looking, what type of school they're looking at can really drive what the decisions are that they are making and what schools they are going to. The next slide is just talking about the risk. Um, more likely to be at risk of non-completion, and this is thinking about how more likely to be at risk to be non-completer. If you're a first generation student, they reported to be at a at serious consideration of leaving school. First generation students, Hispanic students, or Black students, and students who grew up in low income households. So we really do want to pay attention to these students and make sure that we're bringing the resources forward. First generation school students did tell us that they've seriously considered leaving. 41% of the first generation said that they seriously considered leaving school. And many of them are reporting that it is due to financials. So we'll go ahead and go to the next one. And this is where the importance of helping them to understand the importance of renewability and looking at not just getting in, not just getting into the higher education, but to staying with it and making sure that I'm looking at all the total program costs. Half of young students who left school before graduation indicated that financial challenges were a concern. And I will tell you, with these financial challenges, research does show that many of them report it was a financial challenge of $2,500 or less. So in really bringing this forward, a lot of times they've lost a scholarship, and that is can be a barrier. But helping these students to make sure that they're paying attention to what is, I got this scholarship, what's the renewability, what do I need to do to keep it, and that information will be really important. So let's talk. I love this. We're going to go to families out of pocket contributions. That's okay. And this is probably one of my favorite slides, just because I feel like when we show this to families and students, it kind of puts them at ease. But look at that, 27% of the reliance of people relied upon scholarships and grants. And that is up from what it was last year, but last year it was significantly down. So families are highly reliant upon scholarships and grants. Parent income and savings was an area that we saw go down last year. This is where you look at your, many families will look at a payment plan, and I can imagine this year it's going to be addressed there with everything going on with the markets. But look at that. Student borrowing is only at 12% and parent borrowing was at 11%. I know when many people look at this, they're surprised because what you hear out there in the news is very different situation. It may lead you to think it's a very different situation. But this chart helps people to see that it's not a one size fits all and it's not a one source fits all. It's everything all together. And it really does. I mean, look at that. Over a quarter of how families are paying for college is at scholarships and grants. So it really signifies the importance of this resource. All right, the changing dynamics in paying for college. And I kind of mentioned this as we were going through that. You will see, your your borrowed funds did go up a little bit this past year, and a lot of that was in what students are borrowing. Whereas you did see the funded by parents and income that did go down. Again, look at those scholarships and grants. Last year it was 29%. This past year down to 27%, and we really need to keep bringing that back up there. So let's talk about scholarships. And Jonathan, I think you're gonna,
It's me. Well,
yeah,
it's only fair if I have to deal with the same technical glitches you had to try to deal with, Kelly. So hopefully, as I try to advance these, I'll have the same juggling issue that you had to go
you're,
through. So I'm sorry about that. So,
it's all good.
but let's talk about how scholarships can help families offset some of those college costs that certainly are not going down. Um, so as we see on this slide, some more information to share with you from our most recent study. We did find that 64% of students reported that the largest percentage of their scholarship dollars that they received came directly from the colleges that they attended during the previous year. And that averaged about $8,200 of scholarships from the school itself last year. Now you'll see the next two areas. So we had 39% of students reported that they received scholarships from state or local governments, averaging about $2,600. And also 39% of students reported that they received scholarships from outside organizations, averaging about $2,400. So on the next slide, we'll break down the averages based on school type, but you can see that the largest dollar amount did come directly from the colleges themselves, but other sources played an important role. And many students, obviously the percentages do not add it to 100, and that's because many students receive scholarships from more than one source. So think about it for a minute. How many students have you spoken with that they said they would love to attend a certain college or university, but they were concerned that it would cost too much? Would that $2,400 in outside scholarships have changed their attitude or their mind about attending a certain college? As we're focusing on in the next few minutes, talking about some of those external scholarship opportunities.
Hey, Jonathan,
Yes,
can I just
certainly.
interject something here? I did see a question in the chat about everything going on out there, and I just thought as we look at, where scholarships are coming from, um, yes, there is a lot going on out there, but that's the importance of helping families and students to understand the different places they can get scholarships, because you see state and your private scholarships, those are that's real money. And while schools budgets might be tight, might be have to tighten up with everything going on and with some of their funding having gone away, absolutely we need to continue to look at those, but it's going to be even that much more important to help people to realize all of the scholarships out there. So thank you. I'm
Absolutely.
sorry. I just wanted
Oh,
to
thank you. Thank you.
address that question
Well,
a little bit.
well, Kelly shared with you a few moments ago that 27% of college costs were covered by scholarships and grants last year. But if you look at the percentage of students that actually use scholarships, the percentage, it's almost, almost two-thirds. So 64% of families did use scholarships to help pay for school in the 23-24 academic year. And as you would expect, the proportion of families who use scholarships and the amounts of those scholarship dollars that they report certainly does vary by school type. For example, just 50% of students at two-year public colleges use scholarships, and they only reported receiving an average amount of around $2,600. But two out of three, or 67%, of four-year public school students use scholarships, and they reported an average amount of about $4,800. And your highest percentage, 71%, that was from four-year private school students using scholarships, and they also reported the highest average amount of about $11,800. So certainly, once again, reflecting back to what Kelly mentioned earlier about how many families eliminate colleges based on their perceived costs before they even start the application process. This is just another good example of why some of those higher cost schools won't necessarily be more out of pocket money for the families based on those additional scholarships that they're offering students. So some additional information we learned from this past survey was that 80% of families that did rely on scholarships reported that scholarships made it possible for their student to attend college. And another interesting statistic is 87% of families told us that earning a scholarship is something to be proud of. We also asked study participants agreement level with two additional questions regarding scholarships. The first question we asked was, do you think scholarships are only available for students with exceptional grades or abilities? And unfortunately, 52% of college families agreed with this statement, which means that almost half of college families are unaware that there are thousands of scholarships that are awarded based on criteria that have nothing to do with grades or athletics. The second question we asked regarding scholarships was if they thought it was worth their time to apply for scholarships if their parents made too much money. And 38% agreed with that statement. So we dug a little deeper last year to find out what they considered what too much money was by their definition. And 25% of those who agree with this statement believe that too much money meant that their family was making between $100,000 and $150,000 a year. 22% believe too much money was if their family made between $150,000 and $250,000 a year. And a third, or 33%, believe that too much was making more than $250,000 a year. So there are some significant misconceptions that still exist about the availability and qualification for scholarships. So think about that for a minute. Some think that they must be the best in something to get a scholarship, and others think that a scholarship is based on need due to income caps. Are there ways that we can facilitate a conversation to help change some of these misconceptions? Some additional interesting findings from our survey told us that 64% of families that did not use scholarships last year did not even apply for scholarships. So the question is, why are more families, not applying? Our research suggests it has to do with lack of awareness, for one thing. This slide broke out some of the reasons families did not apply for scholarships. 50% of families who didn't apply told us they didn't know of any scholarships at all, or they didn't know of any scholarships that their student would qualify for. And 32% made a trade-off between their perceived likelihood of winning. They just didn't think they would win, so they weren't going to take the time to do it. Another 21% thought it was too much effort to apply, and another 19% reported they had missed the scholarship deadline. Remember when I said at the beginning that the National Scholarship Providers Association estimates an average of $100 million of scholarships are left unclaimed each academic year, largely due to lack of applications and basic misconceptions. So I'm going to go back to one of the other original questions that we asked. Would that additional $2,400 in scholarships help change a student's mind about attending or remaining at a particular college or university? Now, we're not suggesting that colleges blow up their financial aid leveraging models just by giving everyone an additional $2,400. And we all know that third-party or outside scholarships, those scholarships can be used at any college. But what if schools could help facilitate those funds? And what if, those of us that aren't working directly in a college, whether we're at a high school counselor or in other roles, what could we do to help facilitate, families learning about these outside scholarships? What benefits do you see if you have conversations with your students and families that provided them the tools and resources to get some of these extra funds? Would that move the needle and nudge students to attend or to complete college? I think Kelly mentioned a great stat earlier when she was talking about people that did not complete. It was around $2,500 or so that was the amount that a lot of them felt like they would have needed to stay in school. And we're talking about an average of $2,400 that students receive in outside scholarships. So let's pivot for a moment and talk about some of the different resources that are out there and what we can do to help students find these scholarships and apply for these scholarships. We ask a few what-if questions, but we haven't been providing you a lot of answers. We're not going to answer those questions directly, but we would like to provide you with some additional information about scholarships so you're more prepared to have those conversations with students and parents if and when appropriate. As we all know, scholarships are financial aid awards that did not have to be repaid. Free money, which is obviously the most popular. And as our survey said, 87% of families felt like scholarships were something to be proud of. Scholarships could cover the entire cost of tuition, or they might be just a few $100s and just a one-time award. Either way, I would argue it's worth applying for all these scholarships, regardless of the amounts, because it will help reduce the overall cost of education and hopefully reduce or eliminate the need to take out student loans or parent loans. If families are wondering when and how to apply, it's important that they understand that each scholarship has its own unique requirements, and those are usually indicated right on the scholarship websites. They'll also indicate who qualifies, what you need to do to apply, the deadline dates, and whether or not you have to write an essay. I know all of our students love to write essays for scholarships as well as admissions. Some deadlines are as early as the year before college starts. So if students are in high school now, they should also already be researching and applying for scholarships. But if they're a senior, let's say they're in their last semester and they've missed particular scholarship deadline windows, they do not have to give up. They can still look at scholarship information to see which ones they can still apply for right now. Every college has their own deadlines for scholarships, and also outside scholarships have unique deadlines and qualification as well. So we try to, in our roles, we try to make sure we encourage students to read those application qualifications and deadlines carefully, make sure they're filling out the scholarship application completely, and as we said a couple times already, certainly meeting that application deadline date, as 19% of our survey participants said that they had missed the deadline for the previous year. Let's talk a little bit about some scholarships that are available. We know in our survey that people believe scholarships, 52% believe that scholarships are only for star athletes or scholars. In some cases, that's true, but there are so many other opportunities. In fact, you wouldn't believe the type and number available. For almost every skill, every interest and hobby, there's a scholarship out there. People, I think, are sometimes shocked to find out there are scholarships for tall people, short people, volunteers, animal lovers, vegetarians, filmmakers, and the list goes on and on and on. The challenge is looking for the right scholarship and the time that it can take to do that. But students hopefully will realize how important this free money can be, because as we said earlier, the more free money they can get for college, the less they'll have to borrow and repay later. So scholarships can be awarded for a variety of reasons, as you see from the list on this slide. Let's look at some of the different scholarships and where you can find those as well. Kelly's going to talk about online search engines momentarily, but you can see on this slide, scholarships can be found by employers, provided by private companies, nonprofit organizations, community organizations, religious groups, professional organizations, and social organizations. One thing I always suggest is that students ask their family or friends if their employer or any organizations that they're involved with offer scholarships. And if the student himself or herself is employed, they should certainly ask their employer if they offer a scholarship program. You'd be surprised how many private organizations have scholarship programs that go unused due to lack of applications. Certainly, you guys are excellent resources as their college counselors. A lot of high schools publish lists of local scholarships. Another great resource that may be a quick way for them to find them that would not find through a traditional online search. But you can see on this page, there are a lot of resources out there. So I will turn it back over to Kelly to talk about the importance and the ease of scholarship search engines.
Great, thank you. Thanks. Okay, so scholarship search engines. I always like to think of these as it's a place that makes the world a little smaller. And so instead of somebody going out to Google or any search engine, any just general search place and putting in a scholarship, these are places where a student can go and search specific to themselves. Some things to consider in looking at search engines. Sally Mae does have a search engine. Ours is Scully, the Scully search engine, and you will have that there. One of the things that we have found in some of our research, and what we changed in our own search engine is generally, first of all, we should always make sure that they are free. And I always am careful to tell students A scholarship on the front end should never ask for your social security number. But what we found on this is search engines. It's a place you can go put in some information about myself, and it will bring, it's an aggregator of scholarships. And so instead of going out to one vast place that you don't know what you're going to find there, you go to this one place and search it. Our search engine, we actually ungated it this past year, a little over a year ago. And so what that did is that actually removed anybody having to create a sign-on, which we all know anytime we have to go to create a sign-on, you always sit there and say, what are they going to do with this? What emails am I going to start getting from this? And so that's where we removed that. Listening to students and hearing why, some of the reasons why they're not going to this, that was an easy fix for us. So things to be mindful of with a search engine. First of all, it should always be free. Nobody should pay for a scholarship, including searching for them. Continually validating scholarships. Any scholarship that we look to add to our database, we validate it. We look to make sure that somebody is winning it each and every year, that it is that where the person would be putting their information is a safe environment. It's not, they haven't had hacks and they're being responsible with the information that's coming into them. That, it provides a calendar listing of scholarships by deadline, filtering capabilities. So I can go in and filter and say, I'm an incoming freshman. These are my hobbies. This is my GPA. I can tell a little bit about myself, and it will filter in scholarships that are applicable to me. And it's great if it can rate them, and that will help people to understand if the winners of them are rating that scholarship, what's the likelihood of getting that, and that it has adjustable settings. It's really important in working with students to help them understand, some of these features in there. And this is on search. I would say this is on search engines as well as any scholarship that they're looking for. But I really think it's also important, lesson learned 26 years in doing this. We've got to be mindful of this, of who we're trying to get to engage with these, and how we're going to do it. If we're just sending emails out to them, students today are not reading their emails. If we're going to get them to read it, it's got to be captivating, short and sweet, and addressed directly to them. But if you have some great opportunities on scholarships, where are students today? Students are getting their information from social media, but it also is impactful to get the parent involved if that's possible. And they are reading their emails. So I know when my son was in high school, I would get a weekly email about scholarships. And that would be at the dinner table, what we talk about there. You can go to the next page. So we've got to, in creating awareness about these resources, we've got to be in multiple places. I'm sharing with you here 2 places. We do have tips and tricks on essays, which is a barrier for scholarships there. But the great thing is, if they can get down a couple basic scholarships there, they can tailor those for individual scholarships. So if they're in high school and working, they can work with their language arts teacher. And I know the language arts teachers I've talked to, they're like, yes, please, I'd love that. I'd love to help them with that. Take them to that, develop a couple essays, and then they can go in and tailor it to the specific scholarships. But social media, we can't overlook social media. What I'm also sharing with you, like we put a lot out on YouTube. We do many different social media channels. I'm a parent. I'm on Facebook. My kids are on Instagram. Or I really hate to say it, but they're on TikTok as long as TikTok's around. But, so any way we can engage with them and get them to really recognize that. And I will also tell you, I've been at a college session and I actually had a counselor verify they were a first generation student and they were like, absolutely. My first resource is social media because within their network at home, they don't have they don't have the knowledge base there. So they get the information there and then vet that information and then take it home and discuss it within their support network. So I loved to hear that from them. And so he was absolutely like, yep, I've got to put that out there so that the student can vet it and then bring it home to their support network. So we really do need to be mindful of who we're trying to get to engage this information and to really take it in and apply for these scholarships. You can go to the
Hey,
next one.
Kelly, I'm going to interject one thing if you don't mind. You had mentioned the
Please.
our scholarship search page and didn't require an account or to register. And we've listed some tips here about essays. One of the, I think, the more positive changes that we've made to our scholarship search site in the last year, and what I hear feedback from students is they really like the ability to filter out scholarships that require essays. So while we're giving them tips to write essays, they also have if they know they're not going to write an essay, they don't have the time to do that, they can actually filter out scholarships and only see ones that don't require essays from our scholarship search page, which I think is a neat feature. And apparently a lot of students agree with that as well.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. Yes, and again, those essays are anything we can do to help break that down because again, it's free money. Jonathan mentioned this. I love the duck calling scholarship. And I always like to say, if you like asparagus, there's a scholarship for you. So it is really crazy the scholarships that are out there and are real free money that people are winning as they apply. So just helping students to break that down and realize that I know when I talk to students about scholarships, the first thing they say is, I don't have the grades for that. Or I love this one. My family makes too much money for scholarships. Doesn't matter. There's scholarships for need-based, there's scholarships for not need-based, there's a scholarship for everything. And I think many of us have always heard about the duct tape scholarship. What can you make with duct tape, which it's amazing what these students can make. And that's what I always love to help students to understand because we have amazing creative students out there and there are scholarships out there for them, to bring that creativity to life. Many scholarships will, require me to send in some portfolio samples. They might require me to send in a video, which today's students, do they not love videos? That's why TikTok's so popular. So a great thing. Sharing with you two resources here, scholarship guide. We also have a step-by-step FAFSA guide. And I hope that this is helpful. Again, we've got to look for creating more awareness about scholarships, breaking down some of those barriers. It is a really important piece to the puzzle of making higher education accessible. And anything we can do to be mindful of, how do we reach these students? And the support systems are important as well to help kind of push them through, provide that additional guidance there. So I hope that this was helpful information. I know that we had a question in the chat about concerns with the cuts to the Department of Ed and getting the funds to students. We have no reason, we have no reason to believe that they wouldn't be able to get the funding to students that they're applicable to. Jonathan, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
No, I would agree. A lot of things that are being discussed are more future focused. I wouldn't expect any changes at all to any of the federal programs for the coming 25-26 academic year. I know there were some things in the House bill that's come through about
Mhm.
possible changes to some of the parent loan programs in the future. So you
Mhm.
guys know as much as we do at this point. It's certainly interesting times to live in. And what I tell students a lot of times is probably a website you share with your students a lot, the studentaid.gov website, where students and parents have to go to set up their PINs to apply for the FAFSA each year, and they set their PIN numbers. That's a great resource for the most current things going on with federal financial aid, and that will continue to be
Mhm.
a website that I look at weekly, if not more often.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the cut, from what I understand, um, many of the positions that were cut within the Department of Education are going to affect service to schools more so. But I have not heard any concern with being able to get that funnel, to get the funds to the schools.
I agree. Same thing I'm hearing.
So I hope that helps. So good. Any other questions, or what are you finding works help is helpful?
And thank you for the
Okay,
comment
good.
from the
Yeah.
staff member in Mississippi. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Um, Please, we're all in it together, and I think it takes us all to help break down some of these barriers and help people to realize the vast, there are a lot of resources out there, and whatever we can do to bring these resources to, and free money is that good money. Free money does not have to be paid back, and that is our scholarships and grants. So, keep bringing those forward, those resources forward, and helping them to understand, helping our students to understand the value and importance of completing that information.
Well, thanks again for your participation, guys. If there's no further questions, we'll turn it back over to Anando. I know there's another session coming up shortly, and you guys have a great rest of your Thursday.